Well, again, you get to see more of me, but I promise you this will be for the last time in the morning. Well, that's primarily because the morning is going to end by the time this session comes to an end. However, after me, there will be sessions with other speakers, and then I'll be doing a final panel discussion later on in the afternoon, followed by a riveting keynote on machine learning hacking for smart contracts. As all of you know, my name is Ali, and I have the honor to work at Durham College's AI Hub, doing a whole bunch of projects in the world of AI. Now, one of the things many of my students who are probably online right now, and some of our partners and viewers right now who are watching this session, you've heard me say this about my philosophy in the classroom. And that is if you really want to make our students into intelligent, thoughtful individuals, get them to think, not to memorize. And this is very, very challenging, especially when you're teaching code, especially when you're teaching, for example, matters that don't necessarily have any gray areas in them. They're pretty much black or white, right and wrong. So for today's session, what we're going to be looking at is how do you actually shift the world of learning? Not just when you're teaching technology, but how do you incorporate some of the technologies that we're advocating for, that is AI, how do you bring them into the classroom? In the previous sessions, we heard something to the effect of, previously you would tell computers what to do. Now you give computers lots and lots of data, and the computers come out with the best answer. How do you validate that? What are the results if you actually get those outputs wrong? And we're going to be looking at that and contextualizing it within the classroom. AI, as I've said before, is not a product, it's a process. And joining me to discuss that process are two individuals who are not only friends to me, mentors to me, and also the kind of people with whom I can tell you for sure that for them, learning is an ongoing journey, and they're glad to be part of this journey with me and with all of you that are joining us. To all of these 72 viewers that are online right now, welcome to this session as we look at how we can use recommendation and expert systems to improve learning outcomes. My guests today are Professor Sam Plati, in need of no introduction, and on the live chat, I can see many of his student fans are cheering his name, and they're looking forward to seeing him. So his image will pop up very shortly on the stream. All of you know Professor Sam Plati and his many years of dedication at Durham College. And joining him will be part-time faculty member Jahanzeb Abbas, who is not only a very good friend of mine, somebody that actually got me introduced into the world of IT when it comes to hardware engineering, and someone who leads a whole bunch of projects at the Bank of Montreal, if I am not mistaken. Gentlemen, thank you for your time today, and I'm going to dive right into the questions. Sam, let's begin with you and set some context for the audience. When you think about introducing AI into the classroom, what are some aspects of teaching? What are some aspects that expert systems can bring into the classroom that you think that could potentially help the classroom and the learning experience? Sam?
Thank you for the question, Ali. So one of the systems that's been actually out there for a while, it's not truly been automated properly yet, but some of the book publishers are introducing automatic quiz grading, but not to the point where you go in and you pick your A, B, or C, and then you say, well, you got it wrong, here's the answer. What it actually does is if you pick the incorrect answer, it gives you another hint saying, did you remember this learning outcome? And would you like to try again? So then you would try again. Then if you got it wrong the second time, then it would give you, here was a learning outcome, here's the correct answer, and here's where you can find the answer. So that's been slowly being developed, but a new one is called AI Tutor. And AI Tutor is very interesting, and it's working really well on the coding side. So for example, if you're working in Python or R, you would write your first or two lines of code, and then it would give you a hint on what the third, fourth, or fifth line of code is based on it's predicting what you're trying to do. So for example, let's say that you're running a simple linear regression model. It will tell you, well, don't forget that you have to first look at the data and segment the data into train and test, and then you can do your prediction. So we're seeing a lot of that slowly coming up. It's taking more time than usual, but what I'm finding is that some of the online teachings now, if I can start putting that into my classroom, I think it's going to help students not only to help develop the skills, but also be very segmented towards what they need. So if a student needs less help, then the AI bot won't give as many hits. But if someone gets stuck based on a time or based on incorrect code, then the AI bot can give that student more. So now what you're doing is every student is treated as an individual rather than here's a holistic student and I'm just going to give them the random, the same answer to every student. It doesn't work that way. So the AI starts learning on what the student needs and then will give the appropriate hints.
Absolutely. And I think it's extremely important for our audiences listening. I see folks from the region of Durham, so I'm going to give them a shout out. I see Sonia Solomon from the region is on at Invest Durham. Sonia, this is something that you and I, when we were discussing the applications of Minute School. Minute School is a sponsor of Enable AI. Shout out to Tushar Singh for his sponsorship. But we were talking about how can you create automated models that can create curated custom learning patterns? How can you train folks based on their own individualized progress? And I think it's key to understand that expert systems, in my humble opinion, don't just have solutions. Expert systems know the problem and will give you different ways in which you can address that problem. So let's dissect this just a little bit more. Jahanzeb, this is a good opportunity, and I'm going to call you JB as we always do. So Mr. JB, usually you and I would be in conversations when you would try and get me good deals on hard drives and memory drives and whatever else have you. I will tell you this, if you've got any hookups for graphic cards, I am your man. Please let me know ASAP. And you're welcome, everybody that's watching this session in need of graphic cards. But JB, can you help our audience understand a little bit about, Sam spoke about expert systems and these recommendation systems. Can you help them understand in very simple terms, what is a recommendation system and how does it actually work? JB?
Thanks, Ali. And Sam, thank you for establishing that platform. One of the things that I usually see, because I have a part industry background and I'm now in the venture of teaching, within the academic world, what I've seen is in terms of how the recommendation systems work, at least on my side. Recommendation systems in general is a way for the system to learn about you and recommend something to you. Now, there are multiple pathways to it. They pretty much call it either content-based learning or collaborative learning, which is basically saying, okay, if you're a new user in some platform, how can we learn from you with your patterns? Or if you are a user, you can probably connect through different social networks within that website, and how the website can use that additional data to recommend something to you. Some of the advances that at least I've been seeing is we're inching really close to how a human mind thinks about how we should be recommending something. So, for example, if you just walk into a store, you look at product ABC, you look at the contents, you study it as much as you can within the given amount of time and data that you have, and then you come up with your own recommendation, right? So there are multiple steps that are broken down within this decision that you've made. So a recommendation system is basically learning from A to B to Z in the background with the data that it has, and just giving you a prediction.
Absolutely. And I think this is where you have to look at it from what actually constitutes the team that builds these recommendation systems. Now, obviously, you have your front-end folks. So for those of you from the AI Hub that are watching this, you'll know very well every project that we do. We're doing a project right now with Minute School. First aspect is you have to know who's going to work on the front end and the UX UI, which the end user is going to interface with. Then there's the back end folks that constitute of developers who are going to actually develop the interface and the functions that deliver products. But then there are those who are going to work on the data side, the AI folks, and the database sides. So the first thing I want them to understand is that these expert systems, take a lot of hands to come together, but more importantly, you're now seeing the evolution of what we call the knowledge engineer. Somebody in there who's a subject matter expert. For example, if you want to teach, hypothetically, let's say you want to teach sociology or you want to teach English or whatever have you, using some of these expert systems, the role of that knowledge engineer or that subject matter expert is now not just essential, it is quintessential to that process, because you need to understand how people are going to respond to the data and what they need to know based on their learning patterns. Sam, let's bring you back into this conversation, because I've always said that, and I believe it was Steve Jobs that says is that if you can define the problem correctly, and again, I repeat, if you can define the problem correctly, you found the solution. One of the challenges that you've been addressing in your earlier comments was we need to create more individualized learning modules and models so that students can feel more engaged and have curated kind of knowledge and learning experiences. How has COVID and the pandemic got you to think about the role of automation and AI in improving learning outcomes? Sam?
Thank you again for the question, Ali. So what I've been seeing more is there's been a bit of a bit of a disconnect in this collection and storage of data. So if you live in Ontario, you'll see that they keep on revising the numbers and saying, oh, we forgot this, and then we went to a new system. So in Toronto, the number used to be 5,000, but it's 4,000. So this collection and this storage of the data is, first of all, the most important. And if we can't store it correctly, collect it, you can't analyze it. So analyzing data that is not stored properly, or if we don't have it in the right format, how are you supposed to do a recommendation system? So I'll give you a classic example, Amazon. So if you ever go on Amazon and either you search for something, put something in your shopping cart, or buy something, usually within 24 hours, your feed is already changing. And now what they're doing is they're sending you emails saying, oh, by the way, you just bought this product. You just bought earrings for your girlfriend. Do you think she'll like the necklace? And if she likes the necklace and you buy her the necklace, oh, do you want to buy a little box to put them in? That way you can safeguard them. So it's this data collection, this data storage, and then you can make that analysis. And I found with COVID, the issue is that they're collecting all this information and they're not doing anything with it. They're just analyzing. They're analyzing, oh, here's what's going to happen because we're going to open 2 days early or 1 day early. I still feel that this collection and this storage is the biggest issue, and we're still not by it. We haven't gotten over it. Is that we're not doing it properly, and I really go back to just looking at our daily counts. So Toronto now is probably stabilized, but they switched systems, and they didn't tell anyone why they switched the system. It was and then they kept on recorrecting the numbers. And if you ever tried to do an analysis of those numbers, so which numbers are correct? So I can't forecast what's going to happen. I can't forecast that, this section or this postal code should have more vaccines versus another postal code, because the collection and the analysis of that collection is still not consistent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to work with that just a little bit, and JB, bring you back into the conversation. It seems like, JB, on the live chat, you also have a bit of a fan club. I forgot that you did teach last semester. So at least 2 people have said, great to see Jahanzeb on. So, fantastic, good stuff, Captain JB. You've already built in 1 semester, you've built a following. I have 0 following, but you've got a tribe behind you. So that's great to see. Let's pick up a little bit on what Sam has just said. And, I've said this repeatedly, and this is not news to anybody. The I in AI stands for intelligence, but it definitely doesn't stand for individuality. And it definitely doesn't, and it stands for, it has to be more incorporated, it has to be more involved. There are challenges when it comes to bringing in automation and AI into the teaching process. Do you find that there's some resistance in the teaching world to bring more automation into that engagement? Do you find that the traditional models of in the classroom, one-to-many sort of model is predominantly a safe space for many people, and that there's not enough support to actually embed recommendation systems and expert systems into our teaching? Your thoughts, JB?
So when some of these courses were handed off to me, and primarily my emphasis has been on teaching the development side of things. One thing that we have noticed is, at least for the prof side of things, is there's a lot of code to read. There's a lot of code to evaluate. There's a lot of code to assess. One of the things that profs should be equipped with is at least systems that are able to decipher the code, read the code, find patterns in it, or an easy enough method to sort of mark them. I know Sam sort of focused on how the learning aspect can be assisted for students, meaning if they're trying to code something, the program would end up recommending, what else should be there in your code. But My side that I'm trying to sort of show is the side of if you are a prof and you're receiving a lot of code, how that can be assessed and how that can be monitored. A few things that of course is experienced on both ends of the spectrum, either it's the students or the prof, is the information overload and the computational overload, I call it. Information overload, of course, is the amount of code that one has to assess. Computational overload could be, what is the best way to assess this code? Because as you said, AI and coding is a process. It's not something that you just come up with and just dump it somewhere. It's something that has to be carefully assessed, carefully analyzed. And one of the things that at least I've noticed for both students and profs are tool sets that can help you formulate code easily, convert code easily. So for example, I actually had a lot of students in my last semester who were experts in other languages. And some of them were struggling to understand or at least come up with syntax for the new Python language or anything else. Some of my students actually shared these secrets with me where they showed how people have come up with tools that can convert your C code into Python, or your pseudo code, meaning if you write just an if then else statement, that can be converted into actual syntax. So I personally feel there's a stigma on not sharing these tools to enable more effective learning. Some of them may come across these tools as sort of cheating and not really learning, but I personally feel that the more tools we sort of expose to the students, the less likely they are to go to those sort of feature sets on the sides. I'd rather have students share these things with me, and then maybe we can effectively use these tools to either learn more from them or maybe address the gaps where there needs to be more effective learning from it. And that's my sort of landscape on that.
No, I think your 2 rupees of thought are extremely valuable in this equation. And you know what, I do commend the fact that you mentioned that students have shared some of those secrets. And I've said this before, right? The secret to success is that there are no secrets. So I think you've taken us down a very interesting path around how we teach coding. And while that was not the initial trajectory, I'm actually going to take that trajectory and work with that. Sam, let's bring you back into the equation here. And I'll, again, you've all got a fan club, so I'm going to do some shout outs. JB, you've got Sharif, who says JB student in the house, or rather JB student here. And then you have Komal, who says, all the research that I read related to AI is dedicated to Professor Sam Plati. I will tell you this, in my 2 years of teaching, everybody just says, yeah, the guy who tweets a lot. That's all they say about me. But you folks, you've got a fan club. I'm just saying. Anyways, Sam, JB has brought up a very interesting point, different stroke for different folk, as we always say. Do you think that AI and expert systems are more suited to perhaps teaching some of these quantitative-based skills or these math-based skills and language-based skills like coding? Do you feel like the world of teaching code and database, etc., is more suited for expert systems? Or do you think expert systems can be applied tabula rasa to almost any academic discipline? Captain Plati?
Thank you, French. I actually agree with JB. I think that we can leverage a lot of these tools. And I always tell my students, go take a look at Kaggle, GitHub. There's a lot of great stuff there, but stay away from Stack Overflow and some of the other ones who give you partial answers. But the problem is I think teaching is going through this transition, and some of the transition is probably not going to be very favorable because we have to really learn how to teach again. So by implementing any AI sort of tools, like the grading, like helping us with the coding, it's going to be difficult because I'm not going to say old school, but it is this old school of here's how here's how I was taught, so I'm going to teach the same way. And I think that we have to come out of that comfort zone and saying, what, no one's going to really learn the same way that we did. In my case, a long time ago, so over 20 years ago, and I'm learning new ways of coding, and I have to start leveraging these new techniques because that's what's going to really help students. And if you start adopting something like an AI bot or like an AI tutor, like I mentioned before, that can help you with the coding in terms of teaching students how to code, I think that if you integrate that in your learning, then it helps to eliminate some of those gaps. Because when students come into like my program or the AI program or another program, they always have some gap. No student is going to have this full rounded knowledge where they come in and they understand everything. But if an AI tutor can help with, they're struggling with coding and it can help them code, that's just another thing to help me with my course outline or my course objectives, where now I'm removing those gaps where maybe I'm teaching too much at a high level or a low level. And the AI tutor can help us get us to where everyone can be learning at the same level. I'm all for integrating something like an AI tutor or an AI expert system. The issue is going to be, is it going to be acceptable to all teachers or all instructors? And I think that's going to take a lot longer than the AI tutor is going to be fully developed, to tell you the truth. We'll probably have an AI tutor ready to go within a year, if not, there's probably one now. Integrating into the learning environment, I see that being as a lot longer transition, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I want to work with that just a little bit. And I think your point is duly noted about that. It's a long way before we can even imagine full, complete integration of AI to teach code. And I think that has a lot to do with feedback. Feedback goes beyond, beyond the fields of right and wrong. Feedback is about other contextual elements as well. JB, let's talk a little bit about feedback and expert systems. Currently, as these systems sit, it will typically tell you whether your answer is right or wrong. Do you see that as problematic? And in your feedback process, one of the things that I've heard that you do very well is you take into account, for example, what time was the code written? When did the student do the submission? And you take in certain contextual factors of, was the student actually in class? And has the student studied any other courses that may have influenced their performance on this code? How does feedback work into expert systems? And do you see it in the similar vein that Sam does as well?
I'm actually glad that Sam gave those examples. And as Sam was propagating those scenarios, I could already foresee how a recommendation system within the teaching world using AI could be probably built. So I'll give you one example from the product side of things or the industry side of things. So a lot of times, there's one statement I used earlier, which is we are almost on the brink of teaching machines on how to replicate how humans actually make the decisions. So step by step, for example, if you are a student, there's an AI that's monitoring your online journey. So for example, if the prof has set up something online that says you take this quiz, you read this content, throughout that entire journey, imagine that's one scenario. The other scenario is, okay, you're on the Amazon website and you're tracking your customers, clicking or favoriting or how they would rate a product. Similar concept, apply that to learning. The same student is going through the quiz. How long are they taking to select an answer, or how long are they taking to actually read through the content? So in both scenarios, you're seeing patterns that are being recorded. Either they're sequence pattern, or there could be there's another trend in the recommendation engine nowadays called multitask learning, meaning at every stage in time, whether it's how long is the student taking to select an answer, or how long is the customer trying to click on it and actually link their heat spots, right? Those are heat spots in the data. And through that, you can actually devise something that says, okay, this student is struggling, or this customer is having a hard time making a decision. So you recommend something based off of that. Of course, that's just me brainstorming on the fly. But ideally, the way these AI systems should be, eventually built for these scenarios, I would say I don't think we're that far before these things start integrating within the learning systems themselves. I mean, I know that there's a whole stigma, or there may be a lot of pushback because these learning, sort of frameworks are not that well established yet. But I am forecasting that something like this would be there as a toolkit for our students and us.
Absolutely. And you know what, JB, I know you said you're thinking on the fly, but my friend, you fly in a private jet. So I'm definitely boarding that school of thought. And I'm going to go back to Sam again, because this ping pong is working very well for me. Captain Plati, you and I have spoken repeatedly when we're reviewing courses, when we're meeting with peers from other institutions as well. We've had this philosophy that, one of the biggest sort of misnomers out there is that technology equates communication. It doesn't. Just because you've got all of the technology in the room and you've got all of these different tools, it doesn't necessarily support and necessitate communication per se. Can you tell me a little bit about, for example, opportunities that you see in terms of what do you see as next steps if, let's say, a professor or a program wants to integrate some AI and some recommendation systems and expert systems into their learning and hasn't done anything at all? How do you recommend to them to get started? What are some baby steps in order to get this ball rolling?
I think the first baby step is, help with just, even with your grading. So if you can have like some just very simple quizzes where it doesn't mark it wrong and doesn't, but, like I said, go through those steps. Like, would you like to try again? Remember, giving them a little hint. Like by doing that, they can see you're already adding value, right? So what the bigger thing is to just, have students who just with that recall, because there's so much information we throw at them on a weekly basis, daily basis. And sometimes that recall gets a little muddled because they have so much information. And by developing just like a little quiz, and it doesn't even have to be graded. And I know students really struggle with doing work that's not graded because they don't see a value in it. But if that little quiz can help you identify what the gaps are in the course outline or even in your teaching, then you can refocus the learning for not only one student, but for the entire class. So if on average, the class is struggling with a very specific subject, whatever it may be, then you can go back and repeat and review saying, well, it looks like we have some misunderstanding with this subject. Let's do a review. And then without even having students putting their hand up or trying to say, I don't understand, you've now been proactive and said, hey, I'm going to review this because on average, 50, 60, whatever, 70% of students are struggling with this topic. By you being it proactively, now you're eliminating gaps, which means that hopefully in the long run, the learning is going to be a lot better for this, not only for the student, but for yourself as well, saying, maybe that next semester or going forward, that this subject, if it's on average always going to be causing this types of issues of misunderstandings, I have to expand it. I got to do or approach it in a different way. I think that there's a lot of very simple tools that you can do that as a professor, as your step one, before you go into this, like an AI bot that actually helps teach all the coding. But the first couple steps is just a quick quiz to help identify gaps in knowledge for students. And now you can restructure either your teaching or supplement in order to ensure that that section or sections are more robust.
Absolutely. And I think, a key point here is that, and for everyone that's listening, if you do have, for example, an administrator role within the academic system, or even in professional continuous learning within a corporate environment, this is, Sam's hinting at a very important thing, which I see all the time when I evaluate projects. And that is often we believe that, let's throw some finances, let's throw some technology at this, and suddenly we'll incorporate AI into this. There is a very methodological process that has to be taken here, and you need to have the right training, you need to have the right resources in place so that faculty members, so that educators can actually see how you can steadily and slowly make the deployments. As I mentioned yesterday, the key is to keep on moving. Slow progress is better than no progress at all. But I think what you're hearing from Sam and JB is that these technologies, given how remote learning has now taken shot significantly, given how now we teach multiple courses and multiple classes simultaneously in many cases, having these systems are very, very powerful for us. I do think that there's a very interesting subject to talk about. What does this mean to the future of, for example, our teaching assistants in our space of learning? What does it mean to some of the support systems that exist as well? How does automation embed within those environments? And perhaps that is a subject for another time. Now, we've got about 10 more minutes. And JB, I want to weave you back into the conversation because you've definitely focused a great deal on the developer side of things. You focused a great deal on the experiences that people can generate by using different types of AI, by using different types of applications. Can you talk to me a little bit about how you think about, when you think about recommendation systems, how do you think about the user interface? I know everybody, when they go recommendation systems, they think Netflix. How do you think we need to be creating the right engaging and embedded user interfaces to allow for more uptake of these kind of platforms? JB?
Yeah, I think we should be, I mean, as different as academia is from the non-academia side, I think we should be sort of learning some trends that the industry side, non-academia side, has sort of adopted. So a lot of times what happens is, you know, when somebody is browsing through that same website again on Amazon, there are some snippets of information that come up either as advertisements or as maybe some scrollable item that can take your attention from the normal scrolling method or the advertisement into a side scrolling method. So there are multiple strategies that we can learn from the industry side and sort of apply that into the academia side. And if, let's say, you know, going back to this AI assistant tool for the students or even profs, but I'm just going to emphasize on the student side itself. So maybe make the content delivered in a manner that is similar to that view that the customer is used to. Based off of that, we could have snippets of, you know, helpful sites or information or quotes or tweets, right, that would sort of reemphasize what the person is scrolling through or what they're struggling with or spending a lot of time reading. So snippets of information and something that can slightly divert your attention, but in an effective manner is a strategy that we could use in the overall user experience or the design itself. I mean, that's my view on it.
Absolutely. And I'm just taking a look at questions. I know we've got about 5 more minutes. So to the audience, you can DM me your questions or drop them in live chat. I will take a little bit of a tangent here. And I'm sure all of you know this student, Ashish Kuchi. He's made a comment where he says, Ali's about to drop his famous line, get comfortable with being uncomfortable in 3 seconds. It took me about 3 minutes, but I dropped it. Thank you, Ashish. You are a very good and powerful recommendation system and prediction model yourself. Well done. You predicted the future there. Gentlemen, we have 5 more minutes, and there's a question that's come in. Thank you, Wasim, for this question. Wasim, I'll come to your question second, but there was one that was directly messaged to me, and I find this particularly interesting. And this has to do with, do you think that these AI-driven expert systems for learning can be very, very useful for differently abled individuals? I mean, you all know that we did a tech talk with the Ability Center out in Whitby. Shout out to them. I believe they're on as well. Do you think that these learning systems will create for a more inclusive learning environment where, as we say, different strokes for different folks, and you give people more range when it comes to exercising the best way of learning for each individual? Sam?
Absolutely. I think that if you can tailor them to exactly how the student needs for their learning, I think it'd work perfectly. And it could be, you know, visual, auditory, or just even having the way that like a learning disability of where they need extra time or some extra help. And you know, one example that I've seen implemented in the United States, which is very interesting, is where if a student has a learning disability, for example, reading, or they have an issue with context, and what happens was they truncate the data where, you know, they give you the one line or the two, instead of you looking at the whole article, you look at a section of the article. And then after you read it, you're asked a couple of questions. Do you understand the theme? Do you understand what's happening? And then before they can go to the second one, they have to answer a couple of questions in terms of, do they understand what they've read so far? And if they haven't, then it's repeated again. Well, in second in the second line, this is where it's stated the XYZ conclusion regarding the line above, and it just helps them to just go through it and truncates it a little bit better. And you can do that with the learning environment. So for coding, for example, instead of giving a student the entire code, and you know, I do this, I'm sure JB do this as well. It'd be nice to where the student can look at first section of code and say, okay, do you understand what this means? And if they didn't, you know, and give them a little quiz. So what is the section 1 of the code do? Oh, it loads the libraries. Okay, great. second section of code. Oh, I think it does that. Well, it actually does this. And let me tell you why, because line 2 and 3 together create this. And if you do that through the code, I know it takes 10, 20, maybe 30 times as longer to get through the code, but for each line that they review, they're learning. Okay. And it doesn't matter, you know, and when I started coding, it was pretty much thrown into the fire, right? When I started looking at R and Python, there was no one there to teach me. It was like, here are examples. If it doesn't work, go figure it out on your own, or go ask someone who knows code better than you do. It wasn't, but now you can go step by step, and there are tools where, you know, like JB mentioned, where it can help you understand what each line of code is actually doing. So instead of you just cutting and pasting it and praying that when I press that little run button, it works, you know, so I think that we all have some sort of disability or learning disability when it comes to coding. You know, there's no experts out there, but we have to go step by step to doing it.
Absolutely. Great point, Sam. And JB, I'll take the last question to you. And this is a very direct question from Asim, where he says, you know, currently, you know, expert systems from a knowledge and a teaching perspective are not that widely spread. So I'll read the question verbatim. It says, what alternatives currently exist to expert systems that we may use to get started? Any particular products or tools that come to mind?
Well, if you look at and study how Netflix or YouTube have come up with the recommendation systems, they have formulated their own systems, learning and understanding how the actual frameworks for machine learning models work. So as easy as it may be to pick up a product that automatically does something for you, I think in order to have a really effective sort of background and implementation of some recommendation engine, it's really important to look at the latest and greatest research that's ongoing. Of course, there are tools out there. Google is your best friend for that. But for example, you know, at BMO, we have come up with our own sort of engines. There is an R&D team that actually looks at all the models, the latest research out there. And a lot of companies are doing that. On top of building toolkits and suites of software for it. So my personal recommendation is to actually understand the developing aspects of where some of these models are taking us, and if there are tools that are advertising some of those latest and greatest advancements in research, go for those.
Absolutely. And you know what, speaking of that, you know, the one thing that I will say is that if you want to also check out the question that was asked, if you want to check out Minute School, that would be a very good starting point as well. Lots of courses that have been augmented in that environment. And of course, if you want to chat more with JB as well as Sam, they are on the Cyber Exchange platform and you can reach out to them. Now we've come to the last 2 minutes of our session. And now I'm going to go completely off script, not like I didn't do that earlier as well, but I'm now going to go completely off script and ask a question that I've been asking all of my panelists, but I'm going to twist it with a little bit of a different flavor and add some of my own masala to it. JB, let's start with you. So you've completed your first year of teaching, or your first semester of teaching, I should say, at Durham College in the AI program. Why did you, you've got, you know what, I know you very, very well, and you've seen your progress. You're an esteemed leader in the space. You met our team at CISO Forum 2019. You've been coming to all of our events. You came to Enable AI 2019. Tell me one thing about Enable AI 2019 that really stood out for you. JB?
I think the very fact that the whole summit actually inspired not only students, but the local community itself. The very fact that we, or at least Durham College and your efforts and all of your fellow students have inspired the actual Durham community and all the outskirt communities that are associated to Durham region. How that has inspired a lot of AI language within companies or small businesses that were not equipped with AI yet, or they wanted some sort of a freelance-based or volunteer-based projects to show them the benefits. Bringing all the community together to sort of empower everyone and to teach them how AI can basically help out a lot of these processes altogether has been a fantastic journey, at least so far. And even during COVID times, I've been seeing so much engagement from the local community And, like a lot of students and guests online right now can attest to that. So all in all, just bringing the community and showing the benefits of AI and doing these multiple projects that you guys do on the side is just simply super inspirational. Yeah.
And dare I say, Enable AI Summit 2019 was when you brought someone with you who ended up becoming your life partner. So we shall say that we had a role in that. You're welcome, JB. We like spreading the love. Lastly, Captain Sam Plati. You've taught numerous courses. You're involved in data analytics. You're involved in multiple projects with me right now. We have the diploma program that's coming up in AI. What's one thing about that program that gets you particularly excited? Captain Plati?
Yeah, so the new degree program is going to be, I think, something that we haven't seen in Canada in a long time, where students can come in and actually gain some really strong knowledge, not only on looking at from machine learning and AI point of view, but on how these will be implemented like in real life situations. And I think that's what's different from the college level, is that we do have this, there's going to be a very strong practical side with, a good mix of, you understanding the technical side. And I think that this will help us to usher in the new generation of students or workers that are going to be able to go into business and say, it's not about just creating these deep learning or these crazy algorithms like we have at Netflix or at Amazon, but there are some simple things that we can do to automate things and to now shift the workforce into, more strategic and better initiatives. And I think that's what you're going to see with a program like that degree program, where we start to looking at automation, and we'd like to get automation to a level where, all the mundane tasks are gone. And I think this new breed of worker that we're going to get out of this degree program is going to do that.
Fantastic. Well, Captain Plati, Captain JB, thank you for giving us a real quick tour into your perspective into expert systems and learning outcomes. One of the things that I will say is that, as we prepare even for Enable AI 2022, we will actually start diving deep into the technicalities of these expert systems and look at some implementations. Those are the kind of things where we feel in person would work extremely well. So rest assured that you will be getting an invite for Enable AI 2022, and you will be on the speaker's agenda and the speaker roster. To our audience, I will say this, there's a lot that I picked up from this session. But as Edison said, that, I've never failed. I've only found 10,000 ways that do not work. And then you move on to the next one. When it comes to teaching and applying AI into the classroom, it's fine to find those 10,000 ways that do not work and move on to the next. And as Sam has mentioned to you and JB has mentioned to you, at the AI Hub at DC, we're doing our best to create those kind of environments. So if you're falling short, just know that we're constantly trying, and you're always welcome to provide us with your feedback. Gentlemen, I'm going to ask you to stay on for a minute while I close this up, but I'll remind the audience that in about 45 minutes, we will begin our next panel, which is a panel on natural language processing in healthcare. That will be moderated not by me, so that's a good thing. It'll be moderated by Medha Soraya from Connects Health, one of our sponsors. Rick Manessa from iCare Home Health Health Expresso will be on that, one of our sponsors and advisors. And of course, our lovely PI, Sabah Siddiqui, will be joining as well. Following that, we'll have a session on computer visioning and touchless technologies. And then that will be moderated by yours truly. And then we'll have our closing keynote on hacking smart contracts with machine learning, taking us towards the end of the conference at 3:45 p.m. Eastern Standard. Keep the engagements going on www.cyberexchange.ca. Earn some X coins, connect with each other, and keep on tweeting with the hashtag EnableAIDC. Stay safe, stay healthy, everyone. We'll see you in about 45 minutes. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, JB. And I'll see you shortly for a quick close-up. Cheers, everybody.